In 10.2, we're going to learn another volume formula. The I can statement is I can compute the volume of a cone. So we're going to write the word cone right here. And the warm-up says draw and label a cylinder that has a radius of 5 centimeters and a height of 12 centimeters, then find its volume. So to draw a cylinder, I don't think we had to do any of these in the previous section. We're going to draw kind of a lopsided circle, kind of an oval right there. We're going to draw another oval just like it down below it, straight below it, and then we're going to draw some sides on it that connect it like this. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect or anything like that. You can also do something that makes it look a little bit better. We can draw a half circle in front here, and then we can do a dotted line back there. And that just kind of makes it look like it's three-dimensional. We need to have a radius of 5 centimeters. So if we have a radius of 5 centimeters, we're going to draw a line to the side, and we're going to write 5 centimeters right here. And then it has to have a height of 12 centimeters, so it's going to look like that. Remember the volume formula. The volume formula is pi r squared times h. Pi r squared h is the volume of a cylinder, and then we're just going to plug those things in there. So the volume in this case would be pi. We're going to do 5 squared times 12, and then we grab a calculator for this. So let's go ahead and type this in. I'm going to clear that off. So we've got a pi. Remember the pi button's right here above the caret key. And then we're going to do parentheses 5 squared. I really think this is the best way to type these in here because it makes it look nice and we can kind of tell, where one of these factors starts and where the other one ends. So we've got pi times 5 squared times 12. Type that into the calculator. 942.477. 942.477. That 7 is enough to bump that up. So 942.48. So 942.48. Now before I circle that, remember, you've got to make sure that you label these correctly. Volume is always in cubic units, and that's why in that last section I said it's really a good idea to write the units down before you plug this into the calculator. So we're going to do that from now on and make sure you get in that habit. Now the cool thing about today's formula is the volume of a cone is exactly 1/3 of the cylinder with the same dimensions. So the volume of a cone is going to look like this. It's going to look just like the cylinder up above. So we're going to have pi r squared and h, but it's going to be exactly 1/3 of that. So 1/3 pi r squared h is the volume for a cone. Got to make sure that you memorize this. So I've got a little picture of a cone right here. Now they're typically set like this. So we've got the point, the tip, the vertex up here, and then we've got this circular base here. So notice that this height rises straight out of the base, and then we've got the radius indicated here. Again, some of the diagrams and problems that you'll deal with today will give you a diameter. So you need to make sure that if they give you a diameter that you cut that in half so you have the radius. Now the reasoning for this formula turning out the way it does is way beyond the scope of this particular course. Okay, one way that you can remember this is that we multiplied the cylinder formula by 1/3 because if we draw a slice of the cone through the point perpendicular to the base, we get a triangle. So if we kind of slice it like this, we get a triangle, and a triangle has 3 sides, so we're going to divide by 3 or times it by 1/3 in order to come up with the volume. Now that's not a technical argument, it's not a proof, but the idea is we're going to have to divide by 3 or multiply by 1/3, and the fact that this kind of has a triangular cross section might help you remember that. So this one says find the volume of each one of these below and then round answers to the nearest hundredth and don't forget the units. So in order to make sure we don't forget the units, every single time we're going to take this and we're going to write the units before we write down the answers. So the volume is 1/3 pi r squared h. Again, writing down the formula on each one of these is going to help you remember it. So write it down, say it in your mind to get it memorized. So this is going to be 1/3 pi. The radius is 5, so I'm going to do 5 squared, and the height is 12. Well, if that looks familiar, it should, because this is the problem up above. This cone right here is exactly the cone that would fit inside this cylinder. So its volume is going to be 1/3. I realize it looks like a different size, but we were drawing that one from scratch. So please make sure you get the formula memorized. And let's plug this into the calculator. And you'll notice that all I have to do with this one is I just need to put a 1/3 in front there. So I'm going to do 1 divided by 3. And then we're going to multiply by pi. And then we're going to multiply that 5 squared. And then we're going to multiply by that 12. So we're going to hit enter, and notice that this looks like it's about 1/3 of that. So 900, or 1/3 of 900 would be about 300. So that looks like it's pretty good. We're going to round to the nearest, let's see, hundredth. So that's going to be a 6. Now, before we write that down, remember, we want to write down the units. So this is going to be in centimeters cubed, and then we'll find what the number is, 314.16. So 314.16, and that would be centimeters cubed. Okay, we'll take a look at this next one. We've got this diagram right here, looks a little bit different. I could actually write down the units on this one right away. This is going to be in centimeters cubed. So again, we're going to write down the formula. Volume is 1/3 pi r squared h. So this is going to be 1/3 pi, and then the radius is going to be 1/2 of 32. So that's going to be 16. So 16 right here, and then the height is 35. So let's grab the calculator and type this in. Now, I put in the 1/3 in on this previous problem, just doing 1 divided by 3. That's totally okay. I find that much quicker. So here's what I'm going to do on this one. I'm going to hit alpha, and then that F1. So I'm going to grab that function, or that fraction palette right there. So we're going to do a 1. Then we're going to do a 3, and I just find this a little bit more cumbersome. It looks nicer, there's no doubt about that, but I do think that this is a little more difficult. So this is going to be 16. Oh, and I noticed I missed the square on there, so we better put that square on there. So we're going to square that, close the parentheses, and then we're going to multiply by 35. So we've got everything in there. It looks nice and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to hit enter. We get 9,382.890. So that looks good. Now, just for the heck of it, I'm going to do 1 divided by 3. We're going to do the pi, and then we're going to do the 16 squared, close the parentheses, and then the 35. And just to kind of show you that we do get the same answer either way, I do find this a little bit easier to do. You do have to be careful with putting fractions in as division problems sometimes, but that one just has one number on the top and one number on the bottom, and everything in the problem is multiplication, so I think we're in good shape. So again, coming back over here, we need to make sure we put that square on there. I apologize for getting that earlier. And the answer on this one was 9,382 point, and it was 0.89. So 89, and we already put the units on there, so we're all set to go on that one. Okay, let's take a look at C. Same type of thing. I'm going to blow this up just a little bit so we've got some space to write over here. So the volume formula is 1/3 pi r squared h. Make sure you get that memorized. We've got a height right here, and then the radius would be half of that. So the radius is going to be half of 14.4. So the radius on this one is going to be half of that would be 7.2. So let's go ahead and plug these into the formula. So this is going to be 1/3 pi, and then 7.2 squared, and then we've got the 13.1 out here. So we're going to type that into the calculator, but before I do, we're going to write down the units. The units on this one would be feet cubed. So let's find out what the answer is. Let's plug this in. So I'll clear this off. We're going to do 1 divided by 3. And then if you wanted to, you could hit the times. We're going to do a pi. If you wanted to, you could hit the times. Then we're going to do 7.2 squared. If you wanted to, you could hit the times. And then we're going to times that by 13.1. All right, so we've got that all in the calculator. I wrote it a little bit differently, but it should give us the right answer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and we get 711.156. That 6 is enough to bump that up, so we get 711.16. And again, notice that we've already got the units on here, so 711.16. We're going to circle that, and we've got our answer correct. Okay, let's take a quick look at your assignment. So I've got the assignment for 10.2 up here, volume of a cone. If we go through and look again, you'll have some diagrams like this with the figures, and sometimes they give you a diameter, sometimes they give you a radius, so just make sure you're paying attention to what they gave you there. And then again, you've got some problems where you have to solve for the missing height or the radius and round answers to the nearest hundredth. So let's take a look at this one right here. It says find the radius of a cone with a volume of 175 cubic inches and a height of 21 inches. So the formula is V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. So we got all of those things. This is the volume. That's going to go right here. And this is the height. That's going to go right there. So this is 175. This is 1/3 pi, and then we've got r squared. We don't have that, but we do have the height. Okay, so this is going to be 21. Now, there are a couple different things that we can do here to solve this. First thing we need to do is we probably ought to start getting rid of the 1/3 and the pi and the 21. Because this has a fraction in it, I'm going to get rid of that fraction right away by multiplying this side by 3 and multiplying that side by 3. So those would cancel, so we'd have, and I'm going to write this one as 21 pi and then r squared over here, and then we have 3 times 175. So let's grab a calculator and throw that in there. So we're going to do 3 times 175. Now if you can take a guess what it is, and you're pretty close, then that's awesome. So this is going to be 525, so 525. Now you'll notice what I did here is I moved the 21 pi out in front, so it's kind of like a coefficient. Let's go ahead and get rid of that now. We're going to divide both sides by 21 pi. By 21 pi. So we're going to divide both sides by 21 pi. 21's going to cancel, pi is going to cancel. Those factors are gone. So I'm going to have an r squared on this side, and then we get some ugly decimal over here, I am sure. So we're going to take 525 and we're going to divide by. Now we want to divide by both of those. So this is where you've got to be careful putting a fraction in as a division problem. We want to divide by all of that. So we want to divide by 21 and pi. So let's make sure we put those together in parentheses. If you don't put these in parentheses, it's going to give you the wrong answer. It's going to divide 525 by 21 and then it's going to multiply by pi. We want to make sure it knows it needs to divide the 525 by both of those. So I'm going to hit enter. And we get this. Now just for the heck of it, 525 divided by 21, and let's do a pi right here. I'll show you that this would give a different answer because it's going to do the 525 divided by the 21 first and then multiply by pi. It does. It gives us completely the wrong answer there. So please make sure you're careful the way you type them into the calculator. So we get, again, I'm going to do this right. So I'm going to do 525 divided by parentheses 21 pi. Close the parentheses, hit enter. There's that 7.95. So 7.9577. Now we're not done with this, so I'm going to leave it like that for a second. 7.9577 and so forth. Now we need to get the r by itself, so we need to undo the squaring. So I'm going to take the square root of this side and the square root of that side. We get an r on this side because taking the square root undoes squaring. Those are inverse operations of each other. And then we're going to take the square root of whatever that answer is. Now this is why we stored this in the calculator, so that we wouldn't lose any of that decimal accuracy. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit second square root. And then rather than type this in from scratch, you'll notice that above the negative key, and I think we've used this before, it says A and S. So let's hit second, the negative, and the A and S will jump out from underneath there, and we'll hit enter. We get 2.8209. That 0 is not enough to bump this up, so this is going to be 2.82. So 2.82, and then remember this is all in inches, so the answer is in inches. So 2.82 inches, that's rounded to the nearest hundredth. Okay? All right, good luck on the assignment.